Mac Miller off his newest album, Circles. First posthumous album, really put together, produced, and released by Warner Brothers and John Bryan, who is a pretty famous
Yeah,
producer, which I
yeah.
wasn't really
Pretty
that
cool story.
aware of all the stuff he's had his fingers on, but like in recent years, he helped out with Lemonade. He
Late
helped out with
registration.
swimming, late registration. I mean, he's been all over the place, and done a lot of good work. Um, you know, we've had quite a few young rappers who've died, and then their estate puts out these albums afterwards. XXX Tentacion, Lil
Hmm.
Peep.
Yeah.
Um, Not usually to very good effect.
No.
Was this different for you?
This would be different for me, man. And I think the important distinction is that Circles was, by all accounts, very close to completion by Mac himself at the time of his death,
Mhm.
and was intended to be a companion piece to Swimming, his last album. And the fact that Mac's ideas were much clearer, and that he could actually then John Bryan could actually kind of put some finishing touches on this is just different than mining laptop hard drives for any snippets you can and throwing on features from artists that the late XXX liked and would kind of make sense. It's just a different attempt at making an album, because again, the estate is just kind of guiding it through versus trying to still build it back up.
Right.
And it does not come across as craven attempts at milking the vaults and making money. Important distinction with this is that Circles was played for, friendly critics of Mac back in October. This shit's been done.
Mhm.
And they just, they put it out now. You'll notice when he downloaded it, it didn't re-download in your Spotify as they uploaded a new mix. This has been done.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty clear. And frankly, I think it sounds pretty good, and definitely sonically, lyrically feels like a companion to Swimming, which is honestly really cool to see.
Yeah.
And this kind of just reminds you of that potential that Mac had, and that journey and evolution that we were seeing in the past few years of his work. And again, just reminds you of how sad it is that we can't see it continue, And we know Mac has a lot of shit in the vault on top of this, a lot of it much older. And I doubt we're going to get a whole lot of that not recent stuff. If this was a different artist, that might be a very different case. But for Mac, it just definitely feels like a nice, a nice like final testament, even if it's not the final work, So I really enjoyed it.
I thought the album was great. I think you spoke to it well. Swimming was such a step forward. It felt like for Mac artistically, and we talked about it when we reviewed Swimming. So check that out, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. It really had felt like in the albums leading up to Swimming, Mac was kind of starting to find his footing, but still wasn't doing it to like full effect. And Swimming really felt like the most cohesive work he had come out with. It seemed like he had a real vision. It seemed like maybe some of the things he was dealing with, working through, that were driving some of his content, he was starting to kind of get a bit of a grip on. Obviously, then a month later, he passed away. But the fact that he had also recorded Circles and had this, you know, done to some extent prior to his passing, I think it speaks just more to the idea that he had evolved as an artist to this person who had this clear vision, this clear sound, this clear direction he wanted to go in, that he felt like he wanted to make music in. And that really comes across so well. This album feels incredibly cohesive for an album that is finished after the artist dies. And really, I think the back half of this album is just phenomenal, pretty much from like hand me downs to Once a Day, even like Woods I thought was really good. But I think that the second half you really can't miss on. And that's to say, probably my favorite song is in the first third, which is Blue World. So
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff on here. Any tracks that really stood out to you?
Yeah, Blue World stands out as a pretty quintessential late period Mac track. That sounds just like what he was doing. And
Yeah.
if he was still alive today, that makes sense that would be an album highlight on one of his albums. Like that song is great. Also, the production on "Complicated" I really enjoyed as well. They Woods, you nailed it there. Hand Me Downs, like you said, Hands as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like with swimming, it's really kind of uh, bringing it home that Mac was really more of a multi hyphenate. You know, he was becoming more of a just as much a singer songwriter as he was a rapper. There's not a whole lot of hip hop on this.
No.
Swimming had a lot of singing, and not all that singing was that great. You know, he was still kind of coming into his own in that regard. But again, with Circles, you're just kind of seeing, you know, all that influence he took from all over the place really kind of bearing out. You know, the Thundercat fandom in him, the Tyler fandom, the Pharrell. You know,
Yep.
everything's there, and it's just really cool to see. And again, it's really heartwarming to see this release handled with such care and grace by his family. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, really, I honestly really couldn't have asked for better. This was really great.
Yeah, really just makes me feel really sad that we're not going to get more of this. A truly tragic loss.
Yeah,
There's a
no
really
doubt.
good article by Craig Jenkins for Vulture about the relationship between Mac and John Bryan. I encourage people
Yep,
to read that. It's very interesting, and I think highlights the album a bit more. And Craig also had a relationship with Mac, and they were pretty good
yep,
friends. So definitely worth a read. So that finishes up for music. I just want to plug Best of 2020, Nowstalgia Best of 2020 on Spotify.
follow that.
Give that follow.